Hello, welcome to this next Flip Preaching video. My name's Andy. This week we're in Matthew 5:21-37. And I want to start by talking about the fact that I am going slightly grey. If you look very closely, I don't think the camera will pick this up, but I've got one or two, very slight number of grey hairs emerging in my beard. Actually, they've been coming for quite a while, there's more than one or two. But I wanted to start there because Jesus in this passage talks about hair dye. And I want to start there. It's a bit of an odd thing, an odd place to start. But in verse 36, Matthew 5:36, Jesus says that you have no power, you're not able to make your hair white or black. And Jesus would have known that back then people did dye their hair, back then too, as today. So what is Jesus getting about? I'm not tempted, by the way. I'm gonna embrace my grey. But what was Jesus getting at? I think he was saying that, yeah, you can dye your hair, but it doesn't really change the colour underneath. But he's not interested about hair. He's talking about our inner nature, what's inside us, not so much what we do on the outside. And he goes through, in this passage, 4 different areas of life where it's tempting to think that as long as you do the right thing on the outside, it doesn't matter what the inside's like. And he wants to undermine all of that. So he starts off by talking about murder, saying you shouldn't murder, which is one of the 10 commandments. And of course you should not murder, don't get me wrong. But he's saying that it goes deeper. It's about what's on the inside. And if you're angry with somebody, if you're contemptuous towards somebody, if you think someone's worse than you are, if you think you're better than them, if you think someone is a lowlife, then that's bad news, and you need the work of God to sort it out. Now, of course, that affects all of us, but we have to realise that on the inside we are all in need of the redeeming, saving, cleansing work of God. He then talks about committing adultery. Now, in those days, adultery was something that only married women could do. If a married woman cheated, then that was classed as adultery. And if a married man cheated, it wasn't adultery, that was fine. And Jesus, I think, and scholars think, he's trying to redress the balance here. He's saying you can't think of women as inferior to men. You can't do that. He says that if a man looks at a woman, he's very clear about which way round the power goes here. So the ones with all the power, if you look at a woman lustfully, then it's as if you've committed adultery with her in your heart. So actually, it cuts both ways. We shouldn't be treating other people as if they're objects for our pleasure. It has an impact on us and them. Then there's the bit in verse 29 and 30 where a very strange bit where Jesus says, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. If your right hand causes you to sin, chop it off. Now, no one thinks that that's literally true. Although it's a commandment of Jesus, no one thinks that they were meant to do that. I think he was making a kind of jokey point. He was exaggerating the situation to make it clear that actually it's not on the outside, it's not our hand or our eye. The problem of the way we're nasty and mean to other people, that runs deeper. It's not an external thing, it's an internal thing. He then talks on a similar level about divorce. Now, back then, the situation of marriage was very different to how it is today, and it's very difficult to, it's very difficult to draw conclusions from this about divorce and marriage today, because I think things are very different. But back then, women were sort of the property of the husband, and it was the husband's right, if you like, just to throw the wife away and get another one, if that so suited him. And Jesus was saying that even though, we said you could do that, it says that in the law that you just write a certificate, which was a small step towards giving her some legal freedom and chance of a future respectful life afterwards. He says, even then, don't divorce your wife, don't discard someone who you've married. You're there for you've made a commitment. Now, I don't think that means that where relationships go wrong or are toxic or harmful, or where there's abuse, or there are many situations in which actually divorce is probably the least harmful thing. And I don't think Jesus would have a problem with that. He was talking about a particular power imbalance between men and women at the time, and he wanted to say that actually women, the wives, are important in this as well. They're not just things to be argued about in a court of law. And then finally we get back to the thing about swearing vows. If you're trying to sell someone a car and you say, I swear on my life, it's never been to the garage with a problem, it's been starts every time, and that's untrue, that would be, I think, what Jesus is getting at here and criticising here. We're trying to manipulate or deceive someone else by giving the words we say more authority than they actually should have. And he says, no, just say what you mean, let yes be yes and be no. Don't try and flannel. And going back to this idea about dyeing hair, he says you can't make your hair black or white. Jesus knows what we're like on the inside. That's what God sees. He sees us as we were made. It says elsewhere in Matthew 10 that he numbers every hair on our head. He cares for us in that level of detail. So he cares about us, who we are, and he sees everything. So we need to be open to the work of God, cleansing us and making us more holy and more loving. And for other people, they're all made in God's image. He's numbered the hairs on their head too. He loves them just as much. So therefore it's ridiculous for us to be angry or contemptuous or lustful, or to treat other people as sort of property we can sort of be casual and discard, or to try and manipulate them, because they're made in God's image too, and he loves them just as much as he loves you. So may we be people who are, no matter what colour our hair is dyed, may we be people who are attentive to our inner nature and open to the work of God to make us better. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.